Hello everyone. Today, like the last video, we'll be looking at very different rail action to what I usually cover. We'll be in Sydney, the capital of New South Wales, which is the Australian state located south of Queensland, where we'll be based in the northern area of the city in the suburb of Eastwood, spotting many standard gauge, passenger and freight trains passing through the area on what is known as the Main North Line that links Sydney and Armidale, approximately 579 kilometres in length. Without further ado, let's begin. Welcome to the Cairns Railfan. We begin during the morning of a rather miserable day on the 4th of April 2024. However, the weather wouldn't stop me from train spotting here for the next few hours. The first train we see is one of many electric 8-coach long A sets operated by Sydney Trains, a train operating company owned by Transport for New South Wales. The A sets are very common and have been in service since the early 2010s. Operating in multiple areas of suburban Sydney and have earned the name of Waratahs. The next passenger train we see heading north are two Sydney Trains T sets, coupled together to form an 8-coach long train. They are also named the Tangaras and have been in service since the late 1980s and currently serve many of the suburban railway lines around Sydney, similar to the A sets. The next electric passenger train we'll be seeing are two H sets coupled together to form an 8-coach long train seen here operated by New South Wales Trainlink, a train operating company also owned by Transport for New South Wales. The H sets are also known as Oscars and were first introduced in the mid-2000s and operate long-distance trains out of Sydney, but over the next few years will be relegated to suburban duties with new replacement trains being introduced. The next common passenger train type to pass through this area is the New South Wales Trainlink V-set that has been in service since 1970, operating long-distance intercity train services. They're supposed to be on the way out, but their successor, known as the infamous D-set, has been continually delayed, so these trains can still be found operating in New South Wales. Here comes the only Sydney Trains B set that we will be seeing for this video. They belong to the same family as the A sets under the Waratah name. On the other side of the Rutledge Street Bridge, we are able to look north at Eastwood railway station itself. The next train we'll be seeing is our first freight train of the day, a short southbound intermodal freight service identifying as 5NY3 being hauled by Pacific National NR Class NR73 under the GE CV40-9I model built from 1996 to 1998. For those familiar with American railroads, this type of locomotive is essentially the GEVO of Australian standard gauge railways due to how common of a freight hauler it is in many states. We are now facing south of Eastwood once again, in hopes of seeing a northbound freight train pull through. And now, after those southbound T-sets passed underneath us, we see the northbound freight train soon approaching. Its intermodal service 4MB4 being hauled by a quadruple header of Pacific National locomotives, these being NR classes NR50, NR108, AN class AN3, and NR class NR43. The AN class is the star of this consist, being a unique locomotive model, first known as the Australian National AN class, when 11 were built from 1992 to 1993 for the Australian National Railways Commission, which shut down only a few years later. They also go by the model designation of EMD JT46C, but unfortunately the AN classes are on the way out of service due to their high operational costs and maintenance failures as of late. After a break away from train spotting, we come back to a north-facing position where we see multiple passenger movements. As I was waiting for more trains, I was pleasantly surprised by a New South Wales train link XPT, possibly headed northbound interstate for Brisbane, Queensland's capital city, thanks to the dual-gauge connection into southern Queensland. The XPTs are an interstate high-speed diesel passenger train which operates services from New South Wales to Victoria in the south and Queensland in the north. The XPT sets were built from 1981 to 1994, and the power cars uniquely originate from the United Kingdom's British Rail Class 43 high-speed train design, also known as the Intercity 125, whereas the XPT coaches are of an American design. The XPT's highest recorded top speed was 193 km per hour or 120 miles per hour. The XPTs are unfortunately planned for withdrawal soon, but such plans have been delayed due to new replacement stock taking longer than expected to come about. We now face south again, in anticipation of another northbound freight train that will be coming our way. Here comes the next freight train. Similar to what we previously saw, it is yet another intermodal service quadruple-headed by Pacific National locomotives. These being NR classes NR99, 81 class 8143, NR class NR114, and 81 class 8129. The 81 class is yet another commonly used freight diesel locomotive in New South Wales, and in some cases South Victoria as well. They also go by the model name of the EMD JT26C-2SS, with 84 examples being built in the 1980s and 1990s, with the NRs having 120 examples built sometime afterwards. That is not the only freight train headed north at this time though, as a while afterwards we next see SCT Logistics, SCT classes SCT-003 and SCT-008 hauling a mixed freight train on service 4MB9. The SCT class comes under the Downer Rail and EMD GT46C-ACE diesel locomotive model, built since the mid-2000s, with 93 having been built so far, where multiple other Australian railways utilise them under different class names, where many continue to actually be built in the present day. The SCT class was one of the first batches of this model to be built for freight use in Australia. We face north towards the railway station yet again, primarily to see incoming southbound intermodal freight train service 4BM4 hauled by a Pacific National triple header formation of NR class NR86, a N class AN1, and what I assume to be yet another NR class that I was unable to identify the number of. Not only is seeing another AN class a lucky and awesome catch, but the lead locomotive NR86 is also worth noting, as it is wearing the Indian Pacific livery, commonly seen on NR classes that are assigned to haul the Journey Beyond Rail Indian Pacific luxury passenger train, which travels over 4,000 kilometres between Sydney in New South Wales and Perth in Western Australia, where it also travels through South Australia on the way as well. Now approaching is southbound empty steel train service 4BW7 being hauled by Cube QL classes QL014 and QL013. The QL classes come under the GE C44 ACI model, which are an improved variation of the NR class under the GE CV40-99 model mentioned earlier. Around 195 of the model have now been built since the late 2000s and continue to be built today with various improvements from the CV40-9i design that the C44 ACI is based on, with the QL classes actually being built very recently from 2021 to 2023. Multiple Australian railways use this diesel locomotive model for freight purposes under many different class titles. After more passenger trains pass through, yet another southbound intermodal freight train is on the way. This is going to be service 4190. The upcoming freight train is an interesting triple-header mix of locomotives. The train is led by Rail First Asset Management VL class VL362 and Crawford's Freight Line's PHC classes, PHC 001 named Carrot, alongside PHC 002 named Spud. This train is organised by Crawford's Freight Lines, with the VL class of the EMD GT26 model coming from Rail First Asset Management as mentioned previously, who are an Australian company that hires and leases out their rolling stock for use where other railway operators require them. They formerly went by Chicago Freight Car Leasing Australia, also known as CFCLA, the old branding of which can still be seen on upcoming VL263. Just over 10 VL classes have been built in the late 2000s, and uniquely half of the class is built for broad gauge operations on 1,600mm or 5 foot 3 inch track, with the other half built for standard gauge operations on 1,435mm 4 foot 8.5 inch track as seen here. The PHC classes are Crawford's Freightline's only two GE C44 ACI models that they own, with their intermodal trains as seen here being operated by Sydney Rail Services, who provide train crews and other freight rail-based help for freight companies. Here comes both the last freight service and train overall that we'll be seeing in this video. The train approaching is a southbound Pacific National intermodal freight service being hauled by a double header formation of Pacific National NR classes, these being NR 60 and NR 76. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. I would like to say thank you if you made it to the end of this long video of Northern Sydney rail action, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The next video that will be released on the channel will be another installment in my mini-vid series, the last of which was published over a year ago now. This episode will cover a limited amount of action seeing Queensland Rail New Generation Rolling Stock, also known as the NGRs, at Dakabin, north of Brisbane, which is Queensland's capital city. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.